Have you ever felt like you're walking on eggshells around someone who never raises their voice, yet somehow always controls a room? Someone who appears sweet, gentle, maybe even broken, but leaves you emotionally drained, confused, and full of self-doubt? You might be dealing with one of the most dangerous psychological manipulators of all, the female covert narcissist. Today, we're going to peel back the mask and understand her tactics, not to blame, but to protect. If this resonates with you or someone you know, listen closely, take notes, and most importantly, share this message. Because silent manipulation thrives in silence. It's time we expose it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin by understanding what makes the female covert narcissist so dangerously deceptive. Unlike the loud, arrogant, and attention-seeking narcissists we typically imagine, the covert type hides behind subtlety, charm, and quiet manipulation. On the surface, she may appear shy, soft-spoken, even empathetic. But beneath that mask is a carefully constructed persona built to control, confuse, and emotionally dominate. This kind of narcissist doesn't crave attention in obvious ways. She doesn't shout, demand, or dominate physically. Instead, she positions herself as the wounded one, the misunderstood, unappreciated soul. It's her vulnerability, real or acted, that becomes her weapon. And because society doesn't expect women, especially gentle or introverted women, to be manipulators, their behaviors often go unnoticed, unchallenged, and unchecked. One of the most powerful tactics she uses is emotional camouflage. She presents herself as a caregiver, a supportive partner, or a selfless friend. In public, she may appear nurturing and thoughtful, but in private, the manipulation begins. Subtle digs cloaked in concern, passive-aggressive remarks delivered with a smile, and a deep need to control your emotions without ever seeming to do so. She thrives on ambiguity. She'll never tell you directly what's wrong, but she'll make sure you feel it. A sigh here, a withdrawn mood there, a subtle shift in energy that leave you wondering, did I do something wrong? That confusion is intentional. The covert narcissist wants you to become the one constantly seeking approval, chasing validation, and questioning your reality. Another hallmark trait is victimhood as strategy. When confronted, she'll cry before she ever takes accountability. She'll tell stories of how others have always misunderstood her, hurt her, or taken advantage of her. These tales often contain half-truths wrapped in self-pity. The goal? To make you feel guilty for even thinking she could be manipulative. It's a masterclass in psychological reversal, where the one being manipulated ends up apologizing to the manipulator. What makes this especially dangerous is that her tactics are slow and cumulative. You don't notice the manipulation overnight. It begins with small sacrifices, compromising on your boundaries, doubting your intuition, silencing your needs to keep the peace. Over time, this shapes a psychological environment where she becomes the center of your emotional world, and you lose touch with your own. But here's the chilling truth. This is not accidental. Covert narcissists are often highly intelligent and emotionally aware. They know what they're doing. They know how to craft their words carefully, how to weaponize silence, and how to make others feel emotionally obligated to them. Their need for control doesn't come from strength. It comes from deep insecurity. But that insecurity does not excuse the damage it causes. Many victims of female covert narcissists don't even realize what's happening to them until years later. They might simply describe a relationship as confusing, draining, or off. But when emotional patterns are traced, a disturbing picture forms. A life lived under quiet psychological pressure, always catering to someone else's unspoken emotional demands. We must also address the gender bias in how we perceive narcissism. Society tends to view men as the primary narcissists, aggressive, dominating, and loud. But when a woman engages in manipulation through softness, silence, and seduction of sympathy, we rarely call it what it is. This is why female covert narcissists often go undetected. Not because they're rare, but because they operate in ways we aren't taught to recognize. So, how do we protect ourselves? The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to how you feel after interactions. Do you feel guilty for setting boundaries? Do you question your reality often? Are you afraid of her emotional reactions, even when she doesn't raise her voice? These are red flags. Understand that you are not crazy. You are being conditioned. And once you see the pattern clearly, you can begin the process of reclaiming your emotional space. Set firm boundaries, document your feelings, and if necessary, seek professional guidance. Remember, covert abuse thrives in the dark. Your awareness is the light that begins to break the cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, the female covert narcissist does not look like the villain. She may appear like the one who needs saving, but in truth, she's often the one pulling the strings. It's time we stop mistaking manipulation for weakness. It's time we started calling it by its name. And it's time we chose clarity over confusion, truth over illusion. Emotional manipulation is a covert narcissist's most powerful weapon, and when that narcissist is female, the tactics often go unnoticed under guise of sensitivity, kindness, or emotional fragility. Rather than using confrontation or aggression, she chooses guilt, passive aggression, and emotional withdrawal to get what she wants. It's not what she says, it's what she makes you feel. And slowly, almost invisibly, she pulls the strings of your emotions until you no longer trust your own judgment. One of the most common tools she uses is guilt tripping. It doesn't come in loud accusations or direct blame, but in carefully worded sighs, loaded silences, and phrases like, "It's okay, I didn't expect to understand anyway," or "I guess I just care more than you do." These statements are crafted to make you feel like the bad guy, even when you've done nothing wrong. They leave you in a state of emotional debt, where you feel obligated to make up for something that was never your fault to begin with. This is how the covert narcissist turns emotional pain into currency. She will frame her suffering in a way that puts the responsibility on you. If she's sad, you must be the reason. If she's distant, you must have done something wrong. If she's unhappy, it's because you failed to meet her unspoken expectations. She never asks directly for what she wants. She expects you to decode her feelings, anticipate her needs, and deliver solutions without her ever expressing them clearly. And when you fail to do so, the guilt intensifies. Her emotional manipulation isn't just reactive, it's strategic. She may use the silent treatment not as a moment of reflection, but as a method to punish and control. You're left wondering what triggered her withdrawal, spiraling through everything you said or did, trying to fix a problem she won't name. This silent tension forces you to become more cautious, more apologetic, more willing to abandon your own needs just to restore harmony. Over time, you start giving up your boundaries not because she asked you to, but because of the emotional consequences of keeping them feel unbearable. What makes her tactics so dangerous is how easily they blend with social norms. Society often conditions us to interpret a woman's pain as authentic and urgent, and while genuine vulnerability should always be respected, the covert narcissist uses it as a tool, not to connect but to control. Her tears are often calculated. Her breakdowns happen when she fears losing influence or being confronted. She'll cry not because she's wounded, but to deflect accountability and regain emotional leverage. Another subtle tactic is martyrdom. She will go out of her way to appear self-sacrificing, always doing things for others, and then use those sacrifices as moral currency to manipulate guilt. She might remind you of everything she's done, the time she put you first, or how she never asked for anything. These reminders aren't casual, they're weaponized. They are meant to frame her as the giver and you as the taker, making it nearly impossible for you to voice your own needs without feeling selfish. The covert narcissist is skilled at building emotional dependency. She wants you to feel like she's the only one who truly understands you, but only as long as you play by her rules. If you distance yourself or begin to question the relationship, she may respond with subtle threats of abandonment or by playing the victim in a way that makes you feel heartless for pulling away. It's not uncommon for her to say things like, "I guess you don't care anymore," or "I always knew you'd leave me too," just to keep you emotionally tied to her. In public, she might appear warm, even generous, which makes her manipulation in private all the more disorienting. Others may see her as kind-hearted, emotionally intelligent, or even a role model. This dual image isolates the victim. When you try to talk to others about the manipulation, they might not believe you. They might even accuse you of being cold or overreacting, because they only see the mask she wears for the outside world. This contrast between public charm and private control creates a gaslighting effect. You begin to question whether your experiences are real. You wonder if maybe you're too sensitive, too demanding, or too emotional. That's the goal, to destabilize your emotional ground until you rely on her version of reality more than your own. Emotional manipulation by a female covert narcissist is not always easy to recognize, but leaves clear signs: chronic self-doubt, emotional exhaustion, an underlying sense of guilt, and a loss of confidence in your ability to make decisions. You feel like you're constantly trying to prove your love, explain your intentions, and walk a tightrope between caring and suffocating, all while she remains elusive, unreadable, and emotionally distant. Healing begins with awareness. When you recognize a manipulation for what it is, not love, not care, but control, you begin to reclaim your emotional freedom. You stop playing the role she's assigned you. You start setting limits, speaking up, and seeing through the illusions. And most importantly, you remember that love should never feel like a burden or a performance. It should never require you to shrink yourself to be enough. The psychological impact of being entangled with a female covert narcissist is often profound and deeply damaging, yet unfolds so gradually that the victim rarely notices the severity until they're emotionally depleted. At first, the relationship may seem emotionally intense, even meaningful. You might feel deeply connected, drawn in by her vulnerability, attentiveness, or emotional depth. But what feels like closeness in the beginning quickly turns into emotional enmeshment, a space where your identity slowly dissolves and your inner voice gets quieter with each interaction. Over time, you begin to experience chronic self-doubt. You question your choices, your reactions, even your memories. This is not accidental. The covert narcissist method of manipulation isn't loud or direct. It's quiet and psychological. She distorts reality just enough to make you feel unsure, causing you to become increasingly dependent on her interpretation of events. You might find yourself apologizing even when you don't know what you did wrong, or feeling guilty simply for expressing your needs. This persistent confusion is a sign of psychological manipulation designed to erode your self-trust. One of the most harmful effects of being in this dynamic is the subtle and continuous invalidation of your emotions. Whenever you express pain, frustration, or boundaries, they are minimized, redirected, or reframed to suit her narrative. You may hear things like, "You're too sensitive, that's not what happened," or "I can't believe you would think that of me." The message beneath these statements is simple. Your feelings are inconvenient, your perceptions are flawed, and your emotional reality is wrong. This distortion not only invalidates your truth, but also trains you to suppress your instincts in favor of her emotional needs. This constant psychological tug-of-war leads to emotional exhaustion. You might feel like you're always navigating a maze, trying to avoid triggering her passive aggression or silent disapproval. There's no safe space, no emotional consistency. One day she's warm and affectionate, the next cold and distant, without explanation. This emotional unpredictability keeps you in a state of hypervigilance. You start managing her moods instead of your own. And as you continue to sacrifice your emotional needs to maintain peace, you lose clarity about who you are and what you truly feel. This loss of self is not always dramatic. It happens gradually, piece by piece. First, it's your opinions. You start withholding them to avoid confrontation. Then it's your boundaries. You lower them because enforcing them always leads to guilt. Eventually, you find yourself isolated, anxious, and emotionally disconnected from your authentic self. You're not just tired. You're burnt out from carrying the emotional weight of someone who never truly carries yours. What makes it even more complex is the intermittent reinforcement, moments of affection, care, or emotional intimacy that create the illusion of hope. These moments aren't genuine connection. They're control mechanisms. They keep you invested just enough to doubt your instinct to leave. You cling to the highs, believing they're real, while dismissing the lows as misunderstandings or your own fault. This push-pull dynamic creates a trauma bond, where emotional abuse is tied up with validation, making it extremely difficult to detach. Breaking free from the psychological grip of a covert narcissist begins with seeing the pattern. You must recognize that what you're experiencing is not love or emotional connection. It's control disguised as care. Understanding this is the key to healing. When you start to name the behavior, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, silent treatment, you begin to take back your reality. And with that, you reclaim the ability to feel, think, and act without her emotional shadow constantly looming over you. The path to recovery involves reconnecting with yourself. That means tuning back into your emotions without shame, rebuilding your sense of worth outside of her validation, and reestablishing boundaries without fear of guilt. It often requires unlearning the belief that love must hurt, that care requires sacrifice, or that protecting your peace is selfish. Healing is not just about moving on. It's about reawakening the parts of you that were silenced in the relationship. Support is critical during this stage. Whether it's a therapist, a trusted friend, or a support group, having someone validate your experience can be a powerful step in reclaiming your clarity. You may begin to notice just how much of your energy was spent managing someone else's emotions, tiptoeing around their moods, or proving your loyalty to someone who rarely offered the same in return. The truth is, covert narcissistic abuse leaves invisible scars, emotional wounds that don't bleed but ache deeply. But those wounds are not a sign of weakness. They're a testament to how deeply you try to love someone who used your empathy as leverage. Real healing doesn't come from revenge or resentment. It comes from understanding what happened, forgiving yourself for staying, and choosing to never betray your inner voice again. Recognizing the psychological impact is not just about escaping the narcissist's control. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you were forced to abandon. It's about learning that peace is not found in pleasing others at your own expense. It's found in truth, in boundaries, and in the quiet strength of self-respect. Once you begin to understand how a covert narcissist operates, you no longer look at emotional manipulation as love. You see it for what it is, and that clarity is your power. In conclusion, the female covert narcissist operates in shadows, disguising manipulation as vulnerability, guilt as love, and control as care. Her tactics are subtle, calculated, and emotionally draining, leaving her victims confused, exhausted, and stripped of self-worth. Unlike overt narcissists who are easy to spot, the covert kind thrives on ambiguity, making her presence feel more like an emotional fog than a storm. But once the pattern is seen, it cannot be unseen. The journey to healing begins with awareness, naming the manipulation, trusting your instincts, and reclaiming your inner voice. It means realizing that love should never come with chronic guilt, emotional instability, or self-erasure. The moment you recognize a covert abuse is the moment you begin to free yourself. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are being conditioned. Reclaim your peace. Rebuild your identity. And remember, real love never demands you to lose yourself in order to keep it.